About last Sunday. Who would remember?
Not me, because I wasn't here.
Yeah, usually I wouldn't. I wouldn't even remember.
That's, remember yesterday. I don't even remember that. I don't remember exactly right.
Last week we talked about turn it off and turn it back on. Right, resetting ourselves, or unplugging it. Unplugging and plugging it back in, basically, right? So we're going to kind of build off that theme just a little bit here. We're going to talk about being plugged in. So if you unplug something to plug it back in, it has to be plugged back in, right? I thought about this lesson last week with a friend of mine who had been through some struggles in his life, and he was realizing that one of the issues that he had, one of the reasons that he was having such a hard time, was that he wasn't plugged in. What do I mean by that? He wasn't plugged into his church. He wasn't involved. He wasn't deeply involved in God, in religion, in the church. I like inflatables. Some of you in the back may not can see, but I got a little penguin inflatable here. I call them blowy uppy things. Sometimes I just like to go into Walmart and just stare at them. They're so relaxing. That vacuum sound of you stare. You go look at it, the pretty colors. You know, I really like, and I've got several inflatables at home. I blow them up year round and have them in my bedroom. Okay, no, not really. But when they're not plugged in, they look kind of like this.
Well, it looks a little down in the dumps.
It does look a little down in the dumps. Have you ever felt this way?
Yes.
Have you ever felt?
Yes.
What?
That poor penguin.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's pitiful. And you know what? Here's the thing. I've felt like that before. I have struggled with times, and I'll tell you what, I have felt that way in my Christianity before. I have struggled. I have felt deflated. So if I ask you what's wrong with this, you're going to tell me it's not plugged in, right? That's the deal here. It's not plugged in. It needs to have a connection to fill itself up with that air. And you know, the same is true for us. If I'm not plugged in to my God, to my Christianity, and yes, to my church, I'm going to feel deflated. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10 says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might." And then it goes on to talk about the armor of God. Be strong in the Lord. Be full. How do we do this? We have to be plugged in. So, how do we plug ourselves in? All right, I cannot overemphasize how important it is for us to come to church on Sunday. Okay? I can't... I can't emphasize that enough. How important it is to be here. But That doesn't make me a faithful Christian.
No.
I'm not a faithful Christian because I come to church on Sunday, even if it's every single Sunday. That doesn't make me plugged in. Just because I leave here and my seat is warm from me sitting in it, and then I'm not going to sit in that seat after it was warm, like we learned on the trip. Because I don't like to sit in other people's warm seat body heat. But if we're only here warming the seat, that doesn't make us faithful.
Amen.
You know how many hours there are in a week? 168 hours.
No.
There are 168 hours in the week. How many hours do we come here on Sunday to worship? A lot of people are here for 1 hour on Sunday. 1 hour. Do you know what fraction of the week that is?
Not really.
That's less than half of a percent, or a little bit more than half of a percent. A little more than half a percent. That is not much. If you come to Bible class on Sunday morning, you're there for 2 hours. You are still barely over 1% of your week. If you come to Tuesday night Bible study, you still have not made 2% of the week.
Not a lot of time devoted to God.
It is not. And if I come, if I am calling myself a Christian, okay, and hear me, being a Christian is not about adding up the percentages, okay? It's not about numbers. But if I did add all those up, would I be an equipped soldier? If I say, when I am baptized, I become a Christian and I have devoted myself, I have dedicated myself to being a soldier for Christ, is that enough to make me plugged in? If I am a soldier in the Army for the United States of America, if I spend less than 1% of my time, or even less than 2% of my time, am I going to be equipped? Am I going to be prepared? If we're dedicated to something, it's going to be more than Sunday morning. It's going to be more than Tuesday nights.
Amen.
It's going to be through the week. I want us to go to Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2 and verse 42. Acts chapter 2 and verse 42. Brand spanking new Christians. Brand spanking new. You can still smell the baby powder on them. They were continually, how often? Continually devoted. Devoting. What does that mean to be devoting? You are
Committed.
Dedicated. You are committed to this. Continually devoting themselves to what? The apostles' teachings. What are the apostles' teaching? We have them right here in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. They were devoted to the apostles' teaching. They were spending time in that. What else are they devoted to? What's the next word? Fellowship. They were devoted to fellowship, spending time together. Not just in Bible study, as important as that was. They were devoted for that too. But they were devoted just simply spending time together. To teaching. To the breaking of bread. That is, to communion. They were devoted to prayer. They spent time in prayer. We looked at that verse this morning. Pray without ceasing. That is not a matter of you can't go to sleep because you're too busy praying. It's a matter of always having that prayer ready to go. Something good happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray. Something bad happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray. Something neutral happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to pray. They were devoted. And verse 43, everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place with the apostles, and all those who had believed were together and had all things in common. They were sharing. They were so devoted. They were sharing everything that they had. In verse 45, they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing with them all, as anyone might have need. And verse 46, day by day, or maybe your version says daily, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread. That is, this is not the Lord's Supper here in this one. The other verse was the Lord's Supper. This one is dealing with house to house, breaking bread. They were eating together. Folks, they were spending time in each other's homes. Their doors were open, and they were inviting others in to come and eat with them. They were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number. Surprise, surprise. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. Of course they were growing. Why? Because they were plugged in. They were busy. They were involved.
Amen.
Now, I want to point out here, there are a lot of opportunities at Bennington to be involved. And I'm not saying that you're not a faithful Christian if you're not here every time Bennington does something throughout the week. But if I'm feeling deflated, if I'm feeling weak in my faith, if I'm struggling, maybe I'm not giving myself the opportunity to fill myself up that I need to.
Amen.
You know, the several of the churches in Asia had this problem. We can go over to Revelation chapter 2. So we see how good it was when they were plugged in Acts 2. Now let's go to Revelation 2 and look at a few churches over here that had the opposite problem. And we'll start in Revelation 2 verses 1, the church at Ephesus here. And look at what they were dealing with. Let me get over here myself. To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 lampstands, says this: I know your deeds, and your toil, and your perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men. And you put to the test those who found themselves apostles, and they are not. And you have found them to be false. And you have perseverance, and have endured for my name's sake, and have not grown weary. Good job. But I have this against you. You have left your first love. You're going forward. You're doing good. But your love's grown cold. You've left your first love. Then we go to Sardis. Next page over, chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 1. To the angel of the church of Sardis, write, who has the 7 spirits of God and stars, says this: I know your deeds, that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain, which were about to die. for I have not found your deeds completed in the sight of my God. You felt that way sometimes?
Yes.
Now we go to Laodicea. Verse 15 of the same chapter. And this church at Laodicea, we talked about them a lot, because they were lukewarm. They weren't hot. They weren't cold. And in verse 15, it says, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Do you get the idea here that God doesn't like half-hearted Christians? He wants us, yes, he wants us to be involved. He wants us to be plugged in.
Yes.
Now, yes, there are a lot of opportunities at Bennington. We all work together here to make there be a lot of opportunities. But let me tell you what. Even if there was nothing, even if this building was empty from Sunday to Sunday, that would not negate your responsibility. So what do you do if you're in a situation where you're somewhere where you can't be plugged, where you don't feel like you can be plugged in? Folks, you want to be strong in the Lord, you've got to own it. I see people all the time who became a Christian because a family member or a friend convinced them that they needed to be baptized or that they needed to be coming to church, and they did. And their whole Christianity was based around that person. Folks, that's a dangerous way to live out your Christian life. Because as soon as that person, whenever that person passes away, moves away, or something happens and you realize maybe they weren't what you thought they were, you become disenfranchised. You become disenfranchised with the church, with other Christians, and even with God. If I'm going to be plugged in, if I'm going to be the type of Christian I need to be, I got to own it. I got to own it myself. I need to have a personal relationship with God. I cannot vicariously live it through somebody else.
Amen.
Our faith has to be our own. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 12. It says, work out your own salvation. Work out your own salvation.
Amen.
People, I want to be there for you as my brothers and sisters. We talk a lot about bear one another's burdens, right? And I know you want to be there for me too. And so many of you have been there for me over the years.
Snuggle.
But my faith has to be mine. And along these lines, don't wait for somebody to tell you good things that you need to do. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9 says, do not grow weary in well-doing. Own that. Own that yourself. See, I see in the church a lot, and this is so unfortunate because it's Catholic in origin. It's not apostolic in origin. It's from the Catholic Church, where you have the clergy and you have the laity. And the clergy is the one that's closest to God, and they're the ones that are going to tell you what you need to do. And I see this in the church, where, okay, the preacher is the one, he's going to lead the charge, he's going to tell you what you need to do to be faithful to God. Folks, that's not biblical. In Acts 2, they were owning it. They were working together. It doesn't say the preacher assembled them from house to house. It says they were going to house. They owned it. And they were plugged in. You're not going to stand before God. And God's going to say, why weren't you busy in my kingdom? And God's going to say, and you're going to say, well, the preacher never gave me an assignment. Yes, you did have an assignment. You just hadn't owned it. Folks, find your niche. Go where you're needed. And get plugged in. And if you don't know where to start, we have several widow ladies that have needs. And sometimes those needs are a phone call. Call somebody you haven't seen in church in a couple of weeks. Of course, to do that, you've got to make sure you know who hasn't been here in a couple of weeks. And that requires being plugged in, doesn't it? Knowing, being aware of what's going on and what's around you. Another important thing that I want us to remember here. Generally speaking, we are a congregation of very young Christians. I'm so excited about our growth over the last several years. But folks, overall, we're very young in the faith. And having said that, when I'm preparing lessons, or Perez is preparing lessons, or Jim is preparing lessons, or even preparing lessons for ladies' class, that has to be kept in mind. I'll be honest, I try to infuse some meat into the lessons. But we are a generally young congregation. And you're not going to get an awful lot of meat just coming here on Sunday and hearing me speak. If I am to be plugged in, I've got to be studying outside of worship. I've got to be looking at some of the harder topics. I need to be, if at all possible, going places like we did this weekend and absorbing some of that those meatier topics. I have to grow, and I have to own that growth. I don't put out a blanket statement of go to YouTube and watch YouTube videos. I'm not going to do that. But I can recommend some channels that are very much meaty, that will help you to grow in your faith. Make friends with people. Make friends with mature Christians. Not just here at Bennington, but elsewhere. Find those people that are going to make you better. And get plugged in. When I plug myself in, let's see if it's going to work. There it goes. Thought it was going to work for a second.
The faith is coming.
If we don't wait to do what we're told, if we show up, if we have the heart of a servant and a mind to work,
He's raising in the face.
we will see ourselves grow. We will see ourselves mature in every way.
Amen.
We will grow closer to God, and we will grow closer to each other. If we are united and we are working together.
Amen.
If we don't do those things, we begin right there to begin to die, to spiritually die and collapse. If we're not growing, and there's that old saying in the business world, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're no better than what was going on at the church at Ephesus, or the church at Sardis, or the church at Laodicea. We're going to be dead. And the Lord's going to have a response to that. If not in this life, in the next one. And folks, that's serious. Anybody this morning having some struggles that